Welcome to Livzenastrology, the channel for updates and reflections where we are grounded in the stars and elevated by consciousness. Thank you for tuning in. Hello. Welcome to the Livzenastrology podcast. My name is Carmela Yvette. I'm your host. And today I wanted to speak on the Cazimi with Mars and the Sun and the nodes of the moon in astrology. Now today is November 14th, 2021 or 2023. 21, interesting. Got to go back to that time period to see what was happening then. So what wanted to come in today, the information that wanted to be shared as I was reflecting on the energy as we're still deeply into Scorpio season with the sun today at 23 degrees with the Cazimi with Mars. Now, the word Cazimi, from what I understand, is Arabic for in the heart of the sun. And anytime a planet gets at an exact degree point with the sun, that's what's known as a Cazimi. So right now, today, we have Mars at 23 degrees with the sun at 23 degrees. So Mars is Cazimi with the sun. And so when we're reflecting on the energies of Cazimis, we look at, well, what does Mars mean? What is the planet Mars signifying? What is the vibration of the planet? And the star, which is the sun, what is that when it's in conjunction? And then I look at the degree point, 23 degrees, it equals to a 5. You add the 2 and the 3, which will break it down to the 5 numerologically. And 5 always denotes change, from what I understand. And Mars is action. And the sun is shining its light upon or revealing. So with Scorpio, the coloration, which is the sign of where Mars and the sun are conjunct or Cazimi with each other at this degree point, 23 degrees, Scorpio is about transformation. So even if you break these concepts down to their base foundational concepts, just think of, without getting too overwhelmed with the energy itself, because this is a very overwhelming energy. This is a very intense time period with Scorpio and all this transformation happening within so many realms and so many dimensions within us. Breaking down Mars just being action, the sun being shining its light. In Scorpio, transformation. So we're taking action. There is action being taken with the sun, with the solar energy. The soul, we are sun. We are the souls, which is our solar energy. And the action that's happening is alchemaic. It's an alchemaic transformation that's happening real time, and it's connected to the sun. So right then and there, I'm being shown and told to just go out into the sun if you can today, because there's a potent energy happening within the sun codes, within the solar flares that are being emitted from the star of our sun, our central sun. And it's coming through to alchemize Scorpio, or to transform, to change, turning lead into gold, turning one substance, one aspect of ourselves into another. And so that was one point of conversation that wanted to be reflected upon as we are all processing and experiencing these deep alchemies of change happening within our spiritual, our mental or emotional, our physical, and our financial bodies. So adding the support, the medicine of the sun today, if you can, to go get those codes would be really a great utilization of this energy. And also what was coming into play too, because, Mercury, which is the planet or the frequency of communication, of how we speak, of how we think, is in Sagittarius, which is the philosopher, which is higher learning, which is taking the information we have processed through Gemini, the opposition of Sagittarius, and then how do we synthesize it into wisdom through Sagittarius? So in Gemini, we learned about the energy, we learned about the frequencies, we studied, we downloaded, we gathered the information. And then through the opposition Sagittarius, now it's time to synthesize and to bring that into wisdom. Take that information, what it is that you learned about, and how do you apply it into wisdom. So Mercury right now, how we're thinking, how we're speaking, we're really accessing the aspects of us, our inner guru. How we're thinking is about how do we integrate all this transformation through the sun, through action that we're taking, by the breath, by movement, by using specific alchemy. How is that being synthesized now through Sagittarius, which is higher learning, which is wisdom? And as I was processing how this can all be integrated, what struck to me and what came into my awareness was the nodes of the moon, the north node and the south node. Because right now we have our wounded healer Chiron in Aries conjunct the south node of the moon. So the south node, nodal points of the moon are points of the ecliptic. They're not actually planets or asteroids. They're points in the ecliptic where the nodes have shifted frequencies. So between, from what I understand, the moon and the sun, they're nodal axis points. And so right now, we've got a nodal axis point with the south node meeting where we've come from, our past karma as a collective, what we've already embodied, which is, of course, in Aries. And, or Libra rather, I'm sorry, which is in Libra, which is about our relationships. And we've come to learn Aries, right? So when I was thinking and I was processing the language of the nodes, I listened to this astrologer whom I really have so much respect for. His name is Rick Merlin Levine. You can check him out on YouTube. He has his own channel on Instagram. He's an amazing astrologer. He's an amazing wisdom keeper. And he was bringing in, through his last talk about the November forecast, an interesting concept about the word nodes and what nodes mean. When you look up the etymology of node, it means knot, like to knot, to bind, or to tie, like a knot, like you tie a rope in a knot. And then I was through again processing the wisdom of Sagittarius while Mercury is in Sagittarius right now. I like to break down the etymology of, okay, to do or to do not is what was coming in. And that's Shakespeare, right? To do or not to do? That is the question. And as I was contemplating the nodes of the moon, with the south node being in Libra, meaning we've come, again, our karma through relationships. When you say do not, that means you're giving the affirmation of do, which is doing, and then not, which is basically binding or tying to. So whether you do or do not, when you do not, you're actually binding to what you don't want. Now, I know this is sort of an interesting concept that's just coming in, and sometimes it's even as I'm speaking on it, it's a little challenging to kind of wrap my head and the words, Mercury, around this point of wisdom, because there is alchemy in language. The language, and we talked about this in the last podcast, the language is the program in this realm. Right, so coming off the 11/11 portal, and also the Mayan calendar Gap Day, which is the Galactic Activation Portal Day, and this happened on 11/11, and still coming from the ecliptic season that happened early October, and we're still going to be feeling the effects of the eclipse that we had in Libra, and then the last one that we had in Taurus. So that's a 6-month window where we're still integrating this ecliptic energy, this sort of new gnosis that's coming onto the planet, a re-remembrance, if you will, because it was conjunct Libra. So Libra, again, we're talking about The south node is what we've already learned as a collective, what we've already processed, or what we've already, the karma we've come into the realm with. And now we're integrating it through Aries, which is, Aries is ruled by Mars, and we know Mars and the sun are in this Cazimi point today. So there's so much illumination about transformation happening with how we act and how we speak. And so I would just invite in a perspective about the do's and the do nots, and how we equate that to the north and south nodes of the moon. Because we know now that knot is to bind or to tie. And I would even reference that to the south node as what we don't want, right? We do not want this. Do not. Well, in the south node, where do we knot ourselves or bind ourselves or tie ourselves to certain relationships or ways of thinking or programs that were unconscious, that now are having to be illuminated by, now with the sun and Mars together in this Cazimi point, to go, hey, the language, the way you're describing your experience might be what's keeping you in bondage, is keeping you in knots, is keeping you tied to this experience, because what you're projecting through the language is actually an inversion. Again, we talked about the trickster energy. So, and again, Livzen comes from the premise that all is self, and so how we're tricking ourselves by decoding the language and maybe recoding the language in a new way to show us where we bind ourselves or not ourselves every time we say, I do not want this experience. So let's break down the etymology of that. I do not want to be poor. I do not want to be unhealthy. Okay? So I do is the act of doing. Not is I do tie or bind myself to what? The experience that I'm not calling in for myself, that I don't want to experience. So this is an invitation right now with this Cazimi point, while Mars is in the heart of the sun, to show us that perhaps our actions have been inverted because the language that we're using to describe our actions and the actions that we take are actually binding us to these old programs, to these old experiences. And perhaps we need to create a new expression. And we do that by emphasizing and by really pointing to what we do want, right? So, and this is Aries, the heart of the child, really coming to our full Aries expression of self, which is taking action on things that bring you joy, right? Heart of the child, because Aries rules the child, and taking action on those new inventions, those new technologies, those new creations, art forms, whatever it is that's coming in new to you that wants to be expressed through you. Use the language to call in what you want to see more of. So a lot of us, I know, and myself included in this, we talk about what we don't want, right? And because we're in polarity, and because we learn from polarity consciousness, which is the do and the do not, the negative, the positive, the masculine, the feminine, the opposition energy, the contrasting energies of this realm, is all about being able to see self through the contrast. So perhaps at this point now, while Mercury is in Sagittarius and we are learning to be the wisdom keepers of our own lives, we are learning to reflect on the inner gnosis that already exists within us by accessing these points, these nodes, these knots within, on how is it that we can bring in another experience by talking more about what we want to create and not what we don't want to create, which is, of course, binding us to that experience of what we don't want, right? The knot, the ties that bind. And so I'm referencing this to the south and north nodes of the moon, again, because the word node literally means knot, to tie, to bind. So maybe we're telling ourselves how to get out of these bindings, how to get out of these situations, these programs, right? These entanglements we've got ourselves into through relationships, which is Libra, which is the past. And how do we synthesize it? How do we unknot ourselves from these programs by using a different form of the language, a different conversation towards self, towards others, and taking action in a different way, which is Mars, shining the light on where these imbalances, these knots, these entanglements originated. And a lot of that originated because we've got Chiron right next to the North Node in Aries. It happened in childhood. It's the wounds of the child, right? It's what our parents showed us because that's what was shown to them. And that's what their parents showed to them, and so on and so on. So this is ancestral, and this is where the forgiveness codes really are such a magical potion and a magical alchemy to utilize and getting us unknotted, unbound through these nodal points, right? These access points where karmically we have created these imbalances through the language. So this is just a point of reflection as you are creating your reality. Thoughts become things, and words are powerful. Again, words are vibrations, reverberations. So speaking the language in the way that you want to see your world, giving the affirmations of, don't so much tell what you want not to happen, but actually focus on what you do want to happen. So instead of saying, I don't want to be unhealthy, say, I now choose health. I now choose healthy behaviors. I now choose healthy thoughts right now, right now, right now. Claim it, call it, action, take action on it, and then feel your way through what that feels like through taking this inspired action of now affirming what it is you want and not what you don't want, which is what your do nots. Because all you're doing is you're knotting yourself to the experience that you don't want every time you're saying, I do not want this. You're literally saying, I do not, in parentheses, tie or bind, want this, and then you're binding yourself to it. So this is just some of the energy and the reflections that were coming up for this Mars, Cazimi, the sun, today in Scorpio, as we are learning to be our own alchemists, as we are learning to transform, perhaps through the language, through the vibrations, the reverberations, through the universe within, the you who is in verse, who is in motion. And I think of two, like verse, like a music playing, right? Because we are musical instruments that are playing through the language. And now through awareness, through synthesizing the wisdom of understanding how language, how thoughts become things, and then how we speak about our experiences becomes our reality. Perhaps this is a point for us to use a new dialogue, a new dialect, a new way to speak on our experiences, to unbind us, to unknot us, to create a new nodal access point, moving from the south node onto the north node, where again, North Node is right next to the wounds that we might be all experiencing, which is from Aries, from childhood, from learning the language that keeps us in bondage, and now learning how to take back the essence of the language through awareness, through shifts in how you speak, and how you verse yourself, how it's like we're instruments being played into the cosmos. And maybe because the language, we were out of harmony, we were out of tune, if you will. And so we are the instruments that are being played, and now we are tuning ourselves into a more harmonic, beautiful frequency. I think of like an orchestra playing, right? So we're all different instruments, and we're all learning how to be in this beautiful symphony that sounds incredible, right? Like a beautiful Bach, or I'm even thinking, a musical composition that that is spherically harmonious and healing. Solfeggio frequencies that are being spoken through us can be reactivated, regridded, tuned up at this time through just being aware of the language, how we take action on what we speak on, how we speak, what we're reflecting on, really deep diving into the etymology of the language that we're speaking, which is the program, and just connecting to these new nodal points within us, these new knots, these where we have bound ourselves so that we can unbind, untie, and then tie ourselves to the experiences that we truly would like to experience, and not unconsciously or subconsciously bind ourselves to the experiences we don't want to have. So anyway, these are just points of conversation, things that wanted to come up in contemplation today as I was processing the energy of this Cazimi with Mars and the Sun and Scorpio, with Mercury and Sagittarius, just synthesizing all this into some form of wisdom that just makes things more feasible and attainable and makes things feel better, quite frankly. So anyway, if you found any value in this, please like, subscribe, share the channel, share the content. We are here to be each other's wisdom's keepers and to share the knowledge as it comes in real time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. And so I just want to thank you for taking the time to listen, to connect, to do the inner work, to go in and untie your knots, your nodes, and check out where these transits are happening in your chart. And if you want more of a detailed explanation for your own chart and where these are possibly showing up for you, please out your livzenastrology. And I'm actually on a linked tree, so you can check out all my offerings and where the channel presents itself on all the social media. So thank you for connecting. Thank you for listening. Much love. Bye.